Next, we have stage 3 of Shia development, which is the Khilafah of Uthman ibn Affan and the appearance of Abdullah ibn Saba amidst the turmoil and the chaos at the time. And this is from about the year 23 to 35 Hijri. So in the last 6 years of Uthman's Khilafah, he became too old, and the nation became way too big. The lands were so vast and so many people entered Islam. Things began to get out of hand. Uthman had reached his 80s as well, so he was way too old. And some of his relatives began to abuse power, and they caused him and many people to be upset. A number of the companions started to criticize Uthman's policies and some of the decisions. And these were people like Ammar, Talha, Aisha. Ali himself was known for getting into arguments sometimes with Uthman, especially because of the rising complaints of the people. Ali ibn Abi Talib, in the time of Umar al-Khattab, Ali ibn Abi Talib was you can tell they had a lot of chemistry. They were always, Umar would always consult Ali, they would always take his opinions. And however, in the time of Uthman and Ali had very, very different personalities, where Ali was so strict, Uthman was very lenient. And this caused a lot of misunderstandings and some confrontations to happen between the two. Still, there was mutual respect and love, but there was arguments also. The random tribes that opposed Uthman, they gathered and united. A lot of these tribes, a lot of these tribal leaders were not doing it for the sake of Islam. They were actually very corrupt. A lot of them had issues with Uthman's governors. They wanted to spread their influence. They had political ambitions. So they thought, let's get rid of this Khalifa who's blocking our path. This is basically what was going on. And for that, they started coming up with excuses to rise against Uthman. Uthman obviously would counter the excuses. We're not going to get into a lot of what was happening in Uthman's Khilafah in this context, because we're talking about the Shia here. From these corrupt figures was the infamous Jewish convert to Islam who was called Abdullah ibn Saba ibn Sauda. He was from Sana'a in Yemen. He embraced Islam in the time of Uthman. Some reports say that this was by Ali's hands. So this individual, he began to stir trouble in the time of Uthman ibn Affan, and they were raising issues against the Imam of the time, which was Uthman, and against his governors. And it seems Ibn Saba at this point was based in Egypt. Meanwhile, matters escalated. The rebels, they surrounded the Khalif inside his house. Uthman was trying to stick to peaceful resistance for the most part. And he was negotiating, and he was arguing with the rebels. The rebels would present arguments. Uthman would argue against those arguments and prove that they were wrong. Ali was one of Uthman's best friends and biggest defenders during this hard period. He would basically act as representative for both parties. Uthman would send him to these rebels to try to negotiate with them and reconcile and try to. And Ali would hear whatever those guys had to say and bring it back and tell it to Uthman. Obviously, Uthman's relatives were not making things any easier, and here I'm highlighting Marwan specifically. So the companions and the people of Medina began to complain at these hooligans and troublemakers. A lot of these rebels had come from Egypt and Iraq, and they came to Medina, which is not their hometown, and they surrounded the Khalifa, and the people were quite upset that all of these armed individuals were there. Things obviously took a turn for the worse when the hooligans started acting violently. They started attacking some of Uthman's Shia. Anybody who wanted to support Uthman was being attacked or harassed. Ali ibn Abi Talib entered upon Uthman, obviously asked for permission to prepare an army to resist. Uthman forbade Ali. And a couple of the Sahaba were forbidden from Uthman from taking any action. So in order to not disobey the order of the Khalifa, because they had given him the bay'ah, they kind of wiggled their way around it. And some of these Sahaba, they sent their children Zubair sent his son Abdullah, Ali sent his sons Hassan, Hussein, and whatnot, and they sent their children to stand, as a barrier between the rebels and the front door, at least, of Uthman ibn Affan. When the rebels realized that they couldn't bring any valid points to pressure Uthman to do their bidding, and that he wasn't giving them any excuse to force him to step down and retire as a Khalifa, they made up their own excuse. They basically forged some letters and used it as pretext to break into his house and murder him. They climbed through the roof, through the walls, and murdered Uthman ibn Affan in his house. From the letters that were forged were letters in the name of Aisha, which Aisha denied. They also forged letters in the name of Ali, which Ali later denied. And these letters were basically calling people from all the distant lands, come and do armed struggle against the Khalifa. So it was quite extreme content. And Uthman was killed as a result of such of this, basically this conspiracy. Now, the question is, are these rebels who rebelled against Uthman and killed him, are these Ali's Shia?